why is music so impactful? Why does it click with autism and neurodivergent? Tell us a little bit more about what you've learned.
So that's a loaded question because there's so much to music. Let's take a song, for example. There's a lot of aspects that make a song what it is. It's the bass line, it's the texture of the song, the layers of instruments, and how they communicate to each other. And I feel like it's so complex that kind of then translate into human development. Human development is very complex, and no person with autism is the same. So to be able to have all of those components in music and to use them when we need to, specifically for a client's needs, is pretty remarkable, I feel like.
Yeah. No, it does make sense. And have you noticed any consistent patterns of phrasing of words or styles of music that you see in certain scenarios have more impact or others? I don't know if you've just now observed that in multiple settings.
So in my way of practicing, I always use client preferred music. It's always the most motivating, it's familiar, it's comforting. So then to take something that's comforting that they know and to be able to use that to help them, it's an easier process that way, as opposed to a completely new song that they've never heard of. So it's not as intimidating.
Okay, that makes sense. So you as a therapist, what instruments do you just get personally the most joy of using therapeutically?
Ironically, since I played piano since a very young age, I actually would not have said piano in my early career because I just had a love-hate relationship with it. All those classical...
The discipline, the classing, the drills.
Yes, yeah. But now I value the piano a lot in my practice. It can be harmony, it can be melody, it can be supportive, it can be surprising. There can be two people playing all of that together, side by side. So I think it's just the most varied instrument, in my opinion.
So what are some unique challenges that you see in using music therapy with children on the autism spectrum?
That no client with autism is the same. So I really don't, I see their diagnosis of autism, but it really is just a grain of salt for me. I meet the client, I see what their needs are, and I go with what I see. So if they're nonverbal, I'll address that. If they're having more behavioral issues, I'll go in that direction. So it's really just what I see with that client.
That makes sense. And you learn that over time. You just get certain instincts, right?
Yeah.
And so what are some of the, well, I guess let's start with like a favorite success stories or a couple of scenarios. So I'm curious about a couple of things, just maybe a scenario or a student or a success story. And then I also want you to talk a little bit more about what have you learned as a therapist? When do you know something's actually being impactful versus when something maybe just is not working and you have to try something different? So two different questions. And I can ask them separately if that helps.
Yeah, those are great questions. There's a lot of great success stories. I hate to just pick one. The one I always go to is my client I saw when he was 3, I believe. He was nonverbal. He barely spoke one word in our sessions. Fast forward, he's in 1st grade now. He's speaking full sentences. He's reading all of the lyrics to the songs that I present to him. It's amazing to see his progress. It's just so cool. He's an advanced reader now. It's really, really cool to see that.
So on that, do you know, like, what clicked? Like, what of all the things maybe you worked with on therapy, what do you think had the most impact?
I think looking back, it's a little bit easier. I really think even though he wasn't saying anything in our sessions, he was processing. He was understanding. He was taking it all in. He just needed more time to put it into, to execute it.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to think in our sessions I gave him that time. I wasn't pressuring him, to say something by a certain time, to do something specific on instruments. Yes, we have goals and objectives in our sessions, but I like to think in our sessions it's a safe place. I allow them to be and play what they want to, and I'm not going to judge them for it. And I think we've all experienced that. When we were young, someone saying to us, "Oh, you can't sing. You shouldn't sing."
Sure.
No one wants to hear that. So I do my best to not judge them. It's a free space. They can play how they want, and it gives them the motivation to keep going, I think.
That makes a lot of sense. So what have you learned as a therapist? And I don't even know how you would answer this question, but that just makes me curious. How long have you been a therapist, by the way, a professional therapist?
7 years.
7 years, okay,
yeah.
Cool. So what have you learned about, because I think both things have an impact, right? The skills and the dynamics that are created between a therapist and a patient,
yes. Yeah.
in the actual use of the instruments. And have you learned, or have you seen some trends of when to step back as the therapist and let the music, the instrumentation do more of the work? There's just got to be a balance of knowing how much you have to do the work versus letting them kind of experiment, if that makes sense.
That is such a good question. I feel like you might have studied music therapy before.
Studied psychology pretty heavily.
There you go, yeah. So early in my career, I felt like I always had to be doing something. I'm the therapist, I have to be doing something constantly, otherwise it's not going to work. It took time in my career to learn, step back. The music itself is pretty impactful, and sometimes the music does the work on its own. Sometimes I need to step in and help the music do what it needs to do. Sometimes I need to step in and help the client do what he or she needs to do. So it takes some time. It's always a balance, and I think you learn that with every client. It can be different too, how much to pull, how much to push. So I think once you start getting to know a client, you learn that balance more and more.
And to be impactful, how much time do you spend with the actual parents or the caregivers of a child to make sure that it's kind of a holistic?
Oh yeah, I do as much talking as I can before and after sessions, like what's going on at home, what have you seen, what do you have seen what you see in our sessions, do you see that at home? What can I do to help you guys at home work on this more? So there's a lot of work together with the parents too. That's equally important, I think.
And so we're very blessed that you chose Kidlinks. So tell us about that. Why did you choose Kidlinks, and what do you appreciate about Kidlinks?
Yeah, so I really do love Kidlinks. It's a great organization to work for, and I think so Kidlinks didn't always have a Dallas location, so to be able to have that in itself is pretty great too, to be able to serve the community around Dallas. Music therapy can often get pushed underneath the rug a lot of times. People think, oh, I don't really need that, it's not really, necessary. But for some kids it really is, and it really does serve a huge purpose in their lives. And to be able to give that to clients and their families at no cost is huge and pretty rare, I believe. So yeah, to be a part of that legacy, I feel like is remarkable.
From your experience as a clinician, as a therapist, what are some things you wish more people knew about autism and the effect of music on autism?
Yeah.
Because I think that's a lot of what we're trying to understand, and there's a lot of misconceptions, I think, and just a lot of ignorance about autism.
Yeah. So the parallels between music and autism are pretty great too, because music is very structured. It's within a space of time, and a lot of people with autism do need structure. They need to know what's coming. They don't like surprises. So, and a lot of it, in my experience, a lot of people with autism excel very well in music. So to be able to use that in a therapy setting, I feel like it would, benefit them immensely.
So what about autism? What have you learned about autism that maybe a lot of people just don't understand?
I would probably say that no one person with autism is the same as the next. you know, you kind of hear autism and you expect certain things, but that's not always the case.
Yeah. And now back to the music and the therapy question. So are there some things you just wish more people knew about music therapy?
Honestly, I wish people just knew more about music therapy. It's still a very small profession. It's growing more and more, but I feel like the amount of people that don't know music therapy outweigh the people that do know what music therapy is. So just to have that out and you know, to hear it more, I feel like would be great for people.
Now I'm going to ask a little bit about just Kidlinks. What do you wish more parents, if we could reach more parents, what do you wish they knew about Kidlinks?
That music therapy is offered at no cost. I feel like that's a lot. You know, these are challenging times. Things are getting more expensive. To have a therapy at no cost is unheard of, I think. So the fact that you can get that for free is amazing.
Yeah. And then what about the more clinical, therapeutic, professional program side? What do you wish more of that environment? If they could know more about Kidlinks, what would you say to them?
Just how much we're growing and how much we're really willing to help every client and their family. We see the need for this, and I think because of that, all these people in this great organization are willing to help in whatever way they need.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm curious about you just as a musician. How have you grown as a musician going through this experience? Because it's not like you're performing in a professional band. This is a different level of growing your skills. So
yes.
I'm really curious about that.
Yeah, so I was classically trained growing up. It's very rigid. You know, classical music is very, very rigid. So I actually went to a jazz college, and had to learn jazz music. So going from classical to jazz was like learning a different language.
Yeah, for sure.
It was really challenging, but that helped me grow and learn more, you know, chordal structure of music, which helped me then in music therapy, which I then had to learn more about improvisation and, you know, playing a certain way isn't always wrong, which was deep rooted in my classical training.
Yeah.
In music therapy, there is no wrong way to play.
Yeah.
Which is very hard to learn as a classical pianist.
And be okay with it.
Yeah, exactly. So it was a learning experience, but I mean, I think it's helped me grow as a musician a lot.
Yeah, probably more on the instinct side. Yeah, in our band, if we make a mistake, we go, that's just jazz.